And happy birthday to Baker Mayfield. He turns 27 today. Of course, the big news, he was on the podcast yesterday and wasn't well received nationally. Take a listen to what Scott Pioli, former NFL front office executive, had to say about his reaction to what he heard from Baker Mayfield.
There's a couple of things here. He's not the first quarterback to go through something like this. But, you made the comment before, a lot of I's, me's, my's. Mm-hmm. Just for count there, in that first 15 seconds of that clip, it was I, me, my 5 times. Well, check that 6 times. And to me, when you're watching this as an outsider, thinking about a player potentially becoming your quarterback, is this a guy I want to come in to take over my franchise? Unfortunately, sometimes with Baker, he always seems to come across as being the victim. When something goes wrong, he projects that towards someone else, to someone else. That's not what a quarterback can do, or should do. Well, you said it best. When something's going wrong internally, when something's going on at home, family business is family business, and family business stays in the house. You don't need to talk about those problems. I understand some people want to, get their way out of a situation. They think maybe this is his end game. Maybe he thinks this is the way that he can accelerate his path out of that building. But if someone's giving him the advice to do that, to say things, to get himself forced out of there, they better understand and realize that there's a lot of people that are watching this who need a quarterback. And when they see him talk like this and talk about his teammates, it's not going to make him a very popular person in the next locker room he goes to, because people won't trust him. And the other thing it does is there's head coaches and general managers saying, is this really what I want to bring into my locker room? Because if things don't go well, is this some of what I'm going to get?
Well, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. And Quincy, you heard that from a guy that was a former executive on a successful team. What do you make of what he said about Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, look, I know everybody's going to feel and get in their battle stations about whatever it is that Baker Mayfield did or didn't say in that whole podcast situation, right? It's going to be a lot to do or a little made out of it or whatever people are, right? One of the things I did notice when I was listening to the podcast was he kind of believes the stuff that people say about him on Twitter in the positive direction. He believes in all of those, I don't know, memes is the best way to put it, that people have been putting out there about him. And he's regurgitating it, right? Even when he got to the points where he kind of took credit for the Browns' jump in 2018 from 0-16 to now, I know he kind of shirked it off I don't even want to get started in that. But it wasn't in a way where he wasn't denying that he was taking credit for it. And that's the kind of thing that will rub people wrong in the locker room. Because imagine if you're Myles Garrett and Baker Mayfield out here talking like he was the reason the team changed when the team was 0-16. Imagine if you're Nick Chubb, who probably doesn't really care about these things, but Denzel Ward, right? Jarvis Landry. They added 4 Pro Bowlers in 2018 to that team. Baker Mayfield was never one of those guys, right? But yet he still thinks that he is entitled to the credit when there have been multiple players on this roster that have been better at their position than Baker Mayfield ever was at quarterback, and yet he still comes around and takes the credit for the change. And that's just not fair to the rest of the teammates. And it also speaks to somebody who doesn't really have a true team-oriented mindset. Do I think Baker Mayfield cares about being a leader? Yes, I think he cares about how that reflects on himself. But I don't think he has the selfless characteristics that would make you think he is a true leader, because it always comes down to something being about him at the end of the day, right? Why wasn't he successful? Well, they didn't do these things for me. Why are fans mad at you? Because they don't appreciate these things about me, or that they're trying to tell me. It's always something to do with him. It's never kind of any selfless energy that's coming from him. And, we all have experience around people like that. And we know that 4 years is a long time to deal with somebody who nonstop, makes things about themselves. And it seems like, I'm not saying this is the case, but it seems like everything you can look from the outside looking in from Baker Mayfield, that's probably the case with him. And if that is the case, I can see how that can be a grating thing to be around over the course of a year, 2 years, and most definitely over 4 years. And that was my main takeaway. How does his teammates feel about him trying to take the credit for what this franchise has done, right? And then he wants to take credit for the leap, right? He wants to take credit for the leap. But then in the same podcast, oh man, I had 4 offensive coordinators. It was so dysfunctional. And it was like, which one was it? Did we take a leap or not under your leadership? You know what I mean? And it's like you want the good. You don't want to take any of the bad, and you don't want to take any of the blame for the bad. And even when you do, you have a caveat on why it's really not your fault. And, if you want to be the leader, you got to eat the bad on your chest as strong as you eat the good. And sometimes you got to eat the good less so people feel like they're more part of it, and eat the bad more. And he ain't capable. He hasn't showed himself to be capable of that. So, if I'm looking at this as somebody who's supposed to be a leader, like, absolutely not. This guy has showed no traits of being that great leader that we thought he was coming out of Oklahoma, because he just hasn't matured since 2018.